Super Smash Bros. Was a truly remarkable and groundbreaking game. It's a game that has truly made its mark on the world, and will definitely go down in history as one of the best fighting games ever. It's a game that really needs no introduction, since everyone pretty much knows the story by now. But for the sake of the video, I'll give a quick rundown. Masahiro Sakurai came up with the concept way back in 1996, when he originally was designated to create a fighting game called Dragon King: The Fighting Game, which had 4 generic fighters on an empty platform. It was meant to be different from a typical fighting game, as instead of using the normal health bar, you instead had a percent gauge that kept track of the amount of damage you took. The more damage you had, the further you could be launched back. The game was originally planned for a release on the SNES, but was kicked back due to Sakurai, who thought the game was missing something. He felt the characters needed more substance to them, so he came into work one day with a concept. He showed the HAL Laboratory team a small demo of Mario, Link, Kirby, and Pikachu fighting each other, and the rest is history. Sakurai's concept became the very first Super Smash Bros. For the Nintendo 64 in 1996, which showcased 12 different fighters from Nintendo's back catalog of games. The game would continue to see releases for every new generation of consoles made by Nintendo from then onward. The original was on the Nintendo 64, then its sequel was Super Smash Bros. Melee, which would see release on the Nintendo GameCube in 2001. Super Smash Bros. Brawl would be released on the Wii in 2008. A dual release would be released on the Wii U and 3DS in 2014, simply called Smash Wii U and Smash 3DS. And the latest version was Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, which was released on the Nintendo Switch in 2018, just a few short years ago. Each new version of the game saw a different cast come and go, before Ultimate came out, bringing back every character ever seen in Super Smash Bros. History returned to this game, while also introducing new characters to the franchise. It was the perfect way to end a franchise. What more can be done to this game? How could Nintendo ever top this game? Smash Ultimate seemed to be the series' final hurrah. Or is it really? Now, Nintendo knows that Smash Bros. Makes a lot of money, and that the game has a massive following. It's like an event you can't miss. The question becomes, would Sakurai even return to do another game? It seemed likely that he wouldn't return to make another game, and in interviews, he seems to be enjoying his downtime, and he doesn't seem to be working on another game. See, right after Smash Wii U completed its run of DLC, Sakurai immediately started working on the idea for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. But after Ultimate finished, it seems as though Sakurai was done with Smash. However, in a video released on his YouTube channel, he confirmed that he'd likely do another Smash game on the next generation of console, whatever that may be, and said he doesn't see anyone else taking over as director of Super Smash Bros., at least for the time being. So with this, it's likely whenever the next console comes out, he'll begin working on the next Smash game. And with 5 years since the last game, it's likely we might be seeing the next console, and by extension, the next game sometime soon. Smash seems to be a game franchise that cannot die, and with rumors of a new console coming from Nintendo, that could spell the start of another Smash game. So that's why I'm here. It's time for me to build a roster for a potential Super Smash Bros. 6 for a brand new console, and what I think would be a really cool roster for this game. So let's get started. First thing we need to establish is, what direction is this game going to go? This would prove to be a little difficult for me, as Smash is in a bit of a weird spot right now. What would be the direction for this game in terms of how they're going to structure the roster? See, usually the games follow a pattern of add new characters and cut a few characters to make room for those newcomers, typically cutting older characters who don't have a new game coming. However, after Smash Ultimate, Smash is now in between a bit of a rock and a hard place, as now we have to decide on how this new game will look. Personally, I think there are 2 options that are the most likely. Either they follow the old formula of past games and cut characters down to make room for new characters, or it will just be another Smash Ultimate situation and it won't cut any characters, but instead just add new ones. Could there be other directions it could go? Sure, but I think these 2 are the most likely scenarios, so I'm going to continue with that mindset. I'll give you my idea of what the game could look like in both scenarios, starting with the traditional Smash Bros. And then the ultimate rehash scenario. So before I start, I gotta establish how many characters I'll be cutting and how big I think the game roster will be by the end. Now, Smash has followed a pretty normal trend up until this point. In Smash 64, it had only 12 characters. In Melee, they had more than doubled the cast with 14 new characters for a total of 26. Brawl was the first game to have characters cut from the roster, removing 5 characters, but including 18 new characters for a total of 39. Smash Wii U and 3DS changed things up slightly by cutting 6 characters this time around, but bringing in 1 returning fighter and only 11 newcomers for the base roster, but this time including 7 DLC fighters. Granted, 3 were returning from the previous game, but it's still a total of 51 characters for the base roster and 58 including the DLC. Finally, we move on to Ultimate. This one was trickier to calculate, as it included 16 more fighters from the previous game, but Now they have the Echo Fighter theme going on, and Smash Ultimate didn't really include them as numbered fighters. However, that's still 6 brand new characters, 5 returning fighters, and 5 brand new Echoes. So we can see a bit of a trend popping up, as the typical range for new characters is 12 to 16, so I think we'll split it down the middle and include 14 new fighters, not including Echoes. As yes, I will be continuing the Echo Fighter trend. Now, with that established, let's move on into Scenario 1 for my Smash Bros. 6 roster. Before we start, keep in mind that the newcomers I decided are meant to work in either scenario, so I won't change it to include returning characters, so that way they will all be brand new to the franchise. Now, to start this segment off, let's get into which characters I think won't make the cut for Smash 6, assuming they're going to cut the roster at all. But also, I need to decide how many characters should I cut. Well, I think cutting it down to 58 characters before adding the 14 new characters should suffice. That will make the roster size to be an even 72 in base, not including the Echoes or Mii fighters. I know that that's 3 more than Ultimate, but keep in mind Ultimate was burdened with the fact that most of the characters were returning fighters, with only 6 being actual newcomers. But before we get into the new fighters, let's start with the fighters staying in the game, and then go on to the characters being cut from the game in order of franchise. First off, I will be keeping all previously established Echoes, assuming the characters that they are echoing stays in. I wanted to keep the Echoes as I think they are a fun addition, and I also doubt that Sakurai would introduce the concept for one game and not try and capitalize it any further. Plus, they won't take up room on the overall roster anyways. They don't really take away anything, they just add some new faces that change slightly. They're glorified costumes, and that's how I think they can and should stay. Starting off with a bang, obviously we have to keep Mario, Luigi, Peach, Daisy, Rosalina, Bowser, and Bowser Jr. Meaning that Piranha Plant, as fun as he was, I unfortunately had to make a tough call and cut him from the roster. Dr. Mario will not be returning as a unique fighter, though this is more of a demotion as he will instead return as a Mario Echo fighter. I never thought he really deserved unique fighter status, as he's been a Mario clone since the inception of the series, and Ken has more of a distinction to Ryu than Dr. Mario has to Mario, and Ken is an Echo fighter, so I think it's safe to say that Dr. Mario should stay, but only as an Echo to Mario. And of course, Yoshi and Wario will also return. No surprise here, but no cuts will come from the Donkey Kong franchise, as Donkey Kong, Diddy Kong, and King K. Rool will also be returning. Now, the Zelda franchise has kind of gotten shafted for too long now, so only Link, Zelda, Sheik, and Ganondorf will return to make room for more unique Zelda fighters for the future. For as much as I love the idea of Young Link and Toon Link, and for how little Zelda characters are in their roster, they will be cut from the roster despite it hurting to do so. They're really just semi-clones with very few distinctions from Link, and there are so many fan-favorite Zelda characters yet to be in here, so I think we can sacrifice them for new stuff. Now, for as much as I love Pichu, she is way too close to Pikachu. Not that Pichu isn't adorable, but I think it's best to cut her from the roster and leave room for unique fighters. Incineroar will also be cut, as I don't think we need 2 fire starters. So if I only had to keep 1, I'm obviously cutting the least popular of the 2. So that means Pikachu, Jigglypuff, Mewtwo, Pokemon Trainer, Lucario, and Greninja are gonna stay. Now, all the Metroid characters can stay, save for Zero Suit Samus. I know she plays uniquely from Samus, but I'd rather have new Metroid faces to add into Smash. I see no reason to cut any characters from the Kirby series, so Kirby, King Dedede, and Meta Knight can stay. Now, I thought about cutting Wolf from the series, since the Star Fox characters all pretty much play the same, but decided to keep him, as we do need more villain reps, plus I think the better option is to just distinguish the 3 characters further instead of just outright cutting them from the game. Alright, you guys all saw this one coming, but Fire Emblem definitely needed to be trimmed down. I wanted the main 3 sword fighters, Marth, Ike, and Roy, plus I wanted to keep Robin, meaning that yes, Lucina and Chrom are still here as Echoes, but I think that's fine. So Corrin and Byleth are being cut. Corrin is a bit out of date now. Don't get me wrong, I love Fire Emblem Fates, but he's probably the least popular Fire Emblem protagonists in the franchise. I don't see a need to cut any of the Kid Icarus characters, so Pit, Dark Pit, and Palutena will return to the series as well. For the Xenoblade Chronicles characters, we obviously will be keeping Shulk, however I will be cutting Pyra and Mithra. There is a reason for this, no need to worry Xenofans. As for the miscellaneous first-party fighters, first off, the returning fighters, Captain Falcon, Ness, Olimar, Rob, Villager, Isabel, Little Mac, Duck Hunt, and the Inklings will stay. So for the cut characters, I will be cutting Lucas. Not that I hate Lucas, he is one of my mains, so this cut hurts. I had to make some tough decisions, and I also decided that Ice Climbers are going to have to go, as I feel they're way too obscure to stay. I also had to cut some of the retro/joke characters, so I decided to cut Mr. Game & Watch, as well as Wii Fit Trainer. And finally, I will be cutting Min, as I feel like ARMS is just not a popular enough series to keep characters in. Alright, now to the ones that are going to hurt you guys. On to the third-party characters. Here's one you probably saw coming. Snake was a difficult character to bring back already when it came to Smash Ultimate. If Nintendo does make any cuts for Smash 6, I think Snake would be the first on the chopping block. I'd be surprised to see him return, as Konami has been huge sticklers when it comes to Snake. I'd love to keep him, but this is what I think is the most likely scenario, if they were to cut characters. Next up is Hero. This is more of a fact that Square Enix is pretty stingy when it comes to crossing over their characters, and I think we'd be lucky to keep any of the Square Enix reps. But if we could only keep one, it's gotta be Cloud. So I'll keep Cloud and cut Hero. Then we have Banjo-Kazooie. This one was a bit of a toss-up. Not that I think Microsoft wouldn't want to bring back Banjo, but I don't know if he'd survive between games. I could be wrong, but I think if they were to cut fighters, I don't see many of the DLC fighters making it. However, he is again a soft cut, as there is still a chance Banjo could make it, but for now I decided to cut the character as he hasn't really had a relevant game for a long time. Next for Terry, this was a tough cut, as Terry is one of my favorite new inclusions to Smash, and one of the fighters I main, but I decided to cut many of the new DLC as they are either old or they oversaturate the roster a bit. Next up is Steve. Listen, Minecraft is a fun game, hell, I stream it constantly, but I don't think we need to see him return to Smash. That's really all I have to say about any Minecraft reps. Sephiroth is a lot like any of the other Square Enix fighters. I feel if we get any returning Square characters, it's gonna be Cloud. So that means the only third-party characters returning are Sonic, Mega Man, Pac-Man, Ryu, Ken, Cloud, Bayonetta, Simon and Richter, Joker, Kazuya, and Sora. Now, with all that being said, I don't know if this is the most likely scenario, so don't go to the comments yelling at me that I should have cut or kept a character, cause this is just my opinion. However they do it is up in the air. It could just be an Ultimate re-release, but I'm not sure if the fans would enjoy that too much, but I am going to say that it could still happen. I know there are going to be some people going into the comments and say, Cyber, that's unrealistic. This would give us over 100 characters. Listen, Smash Bros. Is the king of destroying expectations, and destroying the status quo on what reality is. I mean, who'd have thought that 10 years ago we would have even 81 characters on this list, and that's not even including the Echo Fighters. And obviously, for me, the ideal situation is to not cut any characters. And for me, regardless on which scenario happens, I crafted the newcomers to work in either one. But my preferred scenario is no cuts, so for the most part, assume I'm doing the safe choice and not cutting any characters. I just wanted to give another aspect of what could happen. So with that, we're going to finally introduce who I believe would be amazing inclusions to Smash. Again, keep in mind this list does not change depending on the scenario, as I believe these choices could work regardless on whether or not they cut characters. So without further ado, I will start this list starting with Echoes, as I want the last characters you see to be unique fighters. So let's get into the brand new Echo Fighters. Now, before I start, I stated that we'd be including 14 new fighters into the base roster. However, that wasn't including the Echoes or potential DLC. In the last game we got 7 Echoes in total, and 2 of them were previously included characters, meaning we only had 5 new Echoes in Ultimate. So we'll be including 1 extra for a round total of 6 new Echoes of our own. So let's get into the brand new Echoes in numeric order, starting with Hero Shade. I think having echoes for some of the older cast is a cool idea, and this would be a cool way to have the old Twilight Princess Link return, as he could have the arsenal that Link had in the older Smash games, such as the Gale Boomerang and the Claw Shot, as well as the bombs that explode on contact. But his final smash could be him turning into his Golden Wolf form to attack, sending them into the realm from Twilight Princess, where he trains Link, only to attack them with all 7 hidden sword techniques, obviously using the finishing blow last before sending the opponent off the stage. Another cool thing we could do is copying Breath of the Wild Link's technique of shooting a blade of light at the opponent if your damage meter is at 0%, but instead, Hero Shade could send a light orb like he did in Twilight Princess.
So we finally meet again. Pit.
She's huge!
Be careful!
Listen well, all you demons of the underworld! In the name of the goddess Palutena, defender of all that is good! Those who hide in the darkness will be made to face the light!
Fly, Pit!
Medusa. A bit of an out-of-pocket pick, but I really liked Kid Icarus Uprising, and I think adding a villain would be cool. Now, Hades as a unique fighter could also work, but I prefer Medusa as an Echo for Palutena. I think she works well as an Echo and gives us more Kid Icarus reps. Though I would say if Kid Icarus was in a better position, I would instead include Hades and maybe even Viridi. So instead of Palutena's Ariatical, Medusa can have Petrifying Eye, a move requiring cooldown, but anyone nearby would turn to stone for a short while. And instead of Explosive Flame, we could use Demonic Missile, and of course change her final smash to Monstrous Medusa. Dixie Kong. I feel like this is a no-brainer. Dixie has always been a popular choice of character to include to Smash, so having her be Diddy's Echo would fit perfectly here. Instead of the Peanut Pop Gun, we could instead have her use the Bubblegum Pop Gun, and instead of using the Rocket Barrel Boost, she could use her Pigtails. You could also change up a few aspects to her normals as well to help her feel a bit unique. Her final smash could be her summoning the Kong family for a barrage of attacks. Birdo. Birdo has a few moves very similar to Yoshi, so her being a Yoshi Echo fits perfectly. She could suck in opponents like Kirby, but spit them out in an egg, and we can give her a unique final smash in comparison to Yoshi. Birdo is one of the many characters I think would fit right into the Smash Bros roster, and she is a fan favorite among Mario characters, and she could add a much needed new Yoshi rep. Shadow. This is a character people have wanted since the Grinch leak back in 2018, so I think putting it here would make a lot of sense. Some say make him a unique fighter, but I could see him being the Ken for Ryu, where he still has a lot of differences from Sonic, plus he was like one of the original clones, so it only makes sense to include him as an Echo fighter for Sonic. You could change his down special to Chaos Control, and instead of Super Sonic, he could have Super Shadow, and you can have it function differently from Super Sonic.
Ready for the next battle. Tekken 8. New challenger. Jin Kazama.
Jin. The final Echo on this list is Jin Kazama as a Kazuya Echo. Much like Ken to Ryu and Shadow to Sonic, I think he would work more like a semi-clone, but I wanted to pat out the Echo fighters since we barely had any, and I think Jin could squeeze by just barely, but I think he would be an awesome character regardless. However, let me know in the comments what other characters you think could have cool Echoes and what those might be. But with the Echoes out of the way, we can finally get into unique new fighters for Smash 6's base roster. Now, unlike my last Build a Roster video, this will be in order of how I think the characters should be introduced. So if the reveals feel arbitrary, that's why. On top of that, I will also give a brief description of the character's special moves and final smash for each character. However, don't expect a full moveset breakdown for every character. However, I do plan to make a new side series called Smash Set, where I can make a full character moveset, plus any other aesthetics to the character. Now, for the first character, I'm actually unsure when they'd introduce them, but I think for me, it would be cool to introduce a brand new Mii fighter, and that Mii fighter is... Mii Mage. For me, I'm surprised we haven't gotten this yet. We have the hand-to-hand fighter, the sword wielder, and the gunner, but not a single Mii that can use magic. I'm not sure how the stats would go, but I imagine they would be similar to Robin. Have attacking and defending moves, give this be some costumes that were on the sword fighter that are more fitting to the spellcaster. I think there is a lot of potential and customization options for this type of Mii. For its neutral specials, I could see 3 customizable moves, one being called Lightning Bolt, an electric strike that could shoot from the staff, Cold Cone, a cone of ice that would freeze the opponent in close range of them, and Meteor Shot, a fire type move that has heavy damage but short range. Its side specials I could see being Wind Blade, which would be a wide slicing wind attack that is tall but won't move very far. Fire Blast, a medium damage and medium ranged burst fire attack, similar to Din's Fire. And Water Spout, a small damage but high knockback water-based attack that sends a ball of water forward, and when it hits the opponent it sends them upward. For its down special, the moves I came up with are Magic Shield, a magic-based counter for physical attacks and reflector for projectile attacks. Rock Crash, an earth-based move where the Mii creates a boulder to push at the opponent. This would be chargeable, making the boulder bigger the longer you charge. And Leech Life, a dark-based spell that steals the life of an opponent and heals you in the process. Finally, for the up specials, one could be obviously a move called Magical Teleport. It does no damage and instantly teleports you in a certain direction. Air Vortex, a wind-based move that launches you high with minimal damage in a medium-ranged area around you. And finally, Wings of Light, a light-based attack conjured by the Mii that sends you a fair distance and does a large amount of damage, but has a low range around you. And of course, we needed a final smash, and the one I came up with was simply called Ultimate Spell, where the Mii conjures 4 different spells to rain down onto the battlefield, the spells being fire-based, ice-based, lightning-based, and earth-based. And now onto the main fighters you clicked on this video for. Eevee. First up on my list is a safe but popular choice. Eevee has only ever been delegated to the Pokeball items in the game, but I feel that Pokemon is popular enough that it could be its own unique fighter. I think adding its costumes based on its appearances in Let's Go Eevee could also be pretty cool, while the colors of each alt can be based around one of each of the evolutions. As for its moveset, I came up with Takedown for its neutral special, which could be a charged attack and does more damage and recoil damage the longer you charge it, but only after impact of course. Its side special could be Swift, which would be a medium range, medium damage attack depending on how many of the Swift stars hit the opponent. Its down special could be Thunder Wave, an attack that could hit all around Eevee that has low damage but also can have a short stun effect on the opponents as well. Its up special could be Fairy Wind, a low damage attack that leaves a trail behind Eevee to continue to do damage for a short time. And finally, its final smash could be the Z move Last Resort, but with a twist, summoning all of the other evolutions into the attack as well in a cutscene style final smash. I think this would be a very fun character to include in the Smash. Waluigi. I mean, do I even have to say why he deserves to be in this game? Like, memes aside, he's possibly one of the last important characters yet to be included from Mario, unless you want to include the Toads. Many say that Waluigi could represent the party side of Mario, and to a certain degree, I would have to agree with that, but I think some uniqueness could also be cool. I think being a quirky fighter fits him as a character. So I'll be pulling from a few ideas that I saw that other mods for the game have used for his moveset. For his neutral special, he could simply have his washout, a chargeable attack that hits the opponent in front of him. This move was pulled from the Smash Infinite mod, which to me is just too fitting for this character. His side special could be Waluigi Kart, which could be similar to Wario's bike. His up special could be Whirluigi, a spinning move from the Mario Tennis games. His down special could be Golf Driver, where he hits a golf ball in front of him, which does minimal damage from afar, but if the opponent is up close, the Golf Driver will deal more damage. And his final smash could be Bob-ombs Away, where he gets into his Bob-omb Blaster from the Mario Tennis games and bombards his opponents, pun intended. Either way, Waluigi is just way too perfect for Smash. Skull Kid. We are in desperate need for new Zelda characters, and I think including a new villain, a fan favorite one at that, fits the feel for Smash. Skull Kid has been highly requested for a long time, and just makes sense to include. For his special moves, I think they could take inspiration from not anything he has done, but from the 4 bosses of Majora's Mask, since he was one that made them to begin with. He wouldn't transform into them, but I could see him wearing their mask remains whenever he does the corresponding moves. For example, his neutral special could be called Odalwa's Moths, where he spits poisonous moths out from in front of him for minimal damage, but a slight poison effect. Then, his side special could be Goat's Charge, where he wears the mask of Goat and charges in front of him to attack the opponent. His down special could be Georg's Murk, donning Georg's mask to spit water and fish on the floor to deal slight damage to anyone standing in. And finally, Twin Mold's Spin, donning the remains of Twin Mold to do a drill spin in the air. And of course, we all saw this one coming, his final smash is Moonfall, where a cutscene would play to drop a moon onto the enemies, similar to that of the Majora's Mask cutscene. Skull Kid would be more of a trickster rather than a powerhouse, which fits his character perfectly. Geno. For a pick everyone has been waiting for, Geno from Mario RPG would be an awesome pick, and he's not out of date anymore. Thanks to the release of the Mario RPG remake, Geno is now in the video game zeitgeist once more, meaning I think he'd be an amazing pick for the game. I'm not including Mallow, as I don't think he's as popular as Geno, and I don't see Mallow getting in over Geno, nor do I see us getting more than one Mario RPG rep. But maybe a Mii costume for Mallow would be fun. For his moveset, I can see them implementing the mechanics from his game, where his special moves require a perfect timing to do more damage and knockback. But if you miss the timing, it would be worse than just getting before the timing. Geno has 5 moves in the game, which I think would translate perfectly to his 4 special moves and final smash. Surprising no one, the Geno Beam will be his neutral special, and it would do more damage and more range if you time it perfectly. For his side special, I think Geno Blast could work best, the move where Geno rains down beams of colored lights. The animation would obviously work faster than in the game, but I think it works best, and could act like Mewtwo's forward throw in a way, where Geno could hit them a couple of times with the beams before knocking them backwards. For his down special, it could be his Geno Boost move, where if he times it early, his moves do more damage, time it perfectly, his moves would do more knockback and more damage, but if he times it late, he wouldn't get the boost at all, and has a cooldown on his move whenever he uses it, regardless of if he succeeds or fails in using the effect. It could work like Wii Fit Trainer's Deep Breathing move. Now, for his up special, it could be Geno Flash, where he shoots himself from a cannon in whatever direction he points it to. And of course his final smash should be Geno Burst, the move in his arsenal that in his game, if timed correctly, can do 9,999 points of damage. In the final smash, Geno would use his burst move in front of him, and any character in front of Geno who got hit by this move would be dealt a hefty amount of damage, but it would show above their head that they took 9,999 damage to reference the gameplay from Mario RPG. And if they have a certain amount of damage by the end of the move, they would instantly be KO'd. Geno, I think, has an excellent moveset, and staying power for a game like Smash Bros. Tiny Kong. I think Tiny Kong is one of the underdogs for Smash inclusions. Dixie I think would work great as an Echo fighter for Diddy, but only a few Kongs work better as their own unique fighter, so I went with a more obscure choice with Tiny Kong. I think her redesign is cool, and one of the few Donkey Kong 64 playable characters who came back post-64, so she could be a good way to reference that game. Her neutral special would obviously be her Feather Bow, a crossbow that can be aimed if the button is held down, and if charged could do more damage. Her side special could be the Orange Grenade, a bouncing explosive that could be unpredictable. Her down special could be Saxophone Slam, a move that does a bunch of damage in a small area around her, which could be a good move to get other players off of her. And of course, Ponytail Twirl would be her up special, for obvious reasons, and could do a small amount of damage and knockback. But for her final smash, it could be Mini Monkey, because of course it has to be, where it plays a cutscene for anyone who she hits, she becomes tiny to beat them up without them seeing where she is.
These readings are accurate. He's here. I found him. I just hope I'm not too late.
Tails. We've been needing a second Sonic rep for a long time, and to me, either Eggman or Tails fits the bill the most. But I decided on Tails, as I feel he fits it more. He's just too iconic, especially for a player 2. For his moveset, we needed to be more streamlined than Sonic's. So for his neutral special, I went with Energy Ball, where he uses his red energy gun to shoot a charged shot. For its side special, Twin Tails attack works as a multi-hit move. His down special will be a reference to the older games and will be the only move similar to Sonic, that being Charge Spin. And of course, his tail copter will be his up air because, well, do I even really have to say why? But for his final smash, it's the Tornado 2 attack, where Tails hits the opponent to then crash his Tornado 2 airplane into them. I spent less time on Tails because honestly he really just speaks for himself on this one. He's just perfect for Smash. Impa. I think it's time Impa finally made it into Smash Bros. Aside from the Triforce Trio, she's one of the most consistent characters to appear in Zelda, but I decided to go with Hyrule Warriors Impa for two main reasons. One, she's one of two Impas we've actually seen fight in the series aside from Age of Calamity, so I could have gone with that Impa, but I think original Hyrule Warriors deserve some love too. And two, I just prefer her design over Age of Calamity Impa. So with that in mind, I want her moveset to reflect her fighting from there, utilizing the weapons she can wield in that game, that being the Giant's Knife / Biggoron Sword, and her Sheikah Naginata. and she would switch between these for both her basic attacks and special attacks, but also do some stuff throughout her moveset that could reference her other game appearances as well. However, I think the only way to do that would be a dedicated video, otherwise I'd be here all day, so I'll be sure to do that in a separate video. However, for her specials, here's what I came up with. Her neutral special could be called Sheikah Slash, a charging move that gathers water before slashing it and anyone who gets caught up into it. Her side special would be Torrent Slash. This could also be a charge move, but could also be a dual hit attack. If done normally, the opponent would be hit once and knocked back, but if fully charged, it would lock the opponent in place for her follow-up attacks and grabs. But you can press the B button once more after the initial attack to do a small wave of water like shown here to knock back the opponent. For her down special, she could use Scorching Naginata, which would slam into the ground to hit all surrounding opponents, and would send her downward if performed in the air. And for her up special, she could use Scorching Rise, using her Naginata to send her upwards through the air for a powerful flame attack. And pressing the B button a second time would perform a downward strike, sending her towards the ground. And for her final smash, I think a smash original attack called Door of Time would be cool. This is where Impa would summon the Door of Time to suck in any opponents, bring them into the Sacred Realm for Impa to summon the other sages from Ocarina of Time to seal them away. I'm sure other attacks would be cool for basic moves if based around Impa's other appearances throughout the Zelda franchise. Ring Fit Trainee. For me, this felt like the natural progression of the Wii Fit Trainer. I'm honestly surprised they weren't included as DLC, but naturally they would have a male and female skin like Wii Fit and many other characters in Smash. But for the purposes of the video, I'll refer to Ring Fit as her, since that will be the default skin. Her moveset could go something like this. Her neutral special could be Ring Vortex, where she can create a vacuum to pull in the opponents and then shoot them away like King K. Rool's musket. For her side special, I thought of Air Blast, which could be a blast of wind to blow at the opponent. Her down special would be Ab Guard, a heavy shield that could reduce damage dealt and grant her super armor, as well as a reflector for projectiles, but she could be easily grabbed in this state and has heavy cooldown to balance. And for her up special, it could be Air Hover, sending air downward to levitate her into the air for minimal damage. And of course her final smash, which I think can be called Four Master Finale, where the Ring Fit Trainee's entire body glows and creates an explosion. Anyone caught in the explosion gets transported to an arena for a cutscene final smash where the four masters of Ring Fit, Allegra, Armando, Abdonis, and Guru Andma appear to deal major damage to the opponent before the trainee comes in for the final strike. I think she would be an amazing pick for the next Smash Bros. Game. Zero. Much like Sonic's series, we definitely needed more Mega Man reps, and who better than the fan favorite, Zero. For his moveset, obviously his neutral special would be his Zero Buster, a 3-stage chargeable blaster that gets bigger for more damage the longer you charge, but is also able to be fired in quick succession by just tapping the button. For his side special, it could be Raikosen, an electrical sword dash that could work as a secondary recovery, but can also stun lock opponents for a short while, and while used in the air can be maneuvered downward. His down special could be Sogenmu, a hologram that is no further than a short walk away from him, which increases his striking range for a short 2 or 3 seconds, but prevents him from walking side to side while using it, but he can still jump. But the opposite is true if used in the air, where he can move slightly in the air but can't jump. And for his up special, it has to be Ryunjin, a flaming sword upward slash that can't be maneuvered much, but has decent damage and heavy knockback. And for his final smash, Mavic Hunting Trio. When he activates his final smash, Zero attacks with a massive sword beam, and anyone caught in it will be transported into a cutscene where X and Axel come in to assist Zero in a 3-on-1 slaughter similar to Shulk's final smash. For me, this could help best represent the Mega Man X series. Isaac. I think it's time for Isaac from Golden Sun to finally make the leap from assist trophy to playable. He's been one of the most requested characters for Smash, and although he is another magic swordsman, he does use earth synergy more than his sword. I do plan to make a full moveset for him, but for his specials, I think for his neutral special, his move ability is best. It can be charged and change his movement like in Super Smash Flash. His side special could be Spire, an earth-based attack that summons pieces of earth synergy to drop onto the opponents. For his down special, Growth I think is best, and it can be used as a trap to ensnare and damage enemies for a short while, but using it more than once replaces the old one. For his up special, I think Retreat could work, and it would allow Isaac to be the only sword fighter to have a teleport recovery. And for his final smash, it would of course have to be Judgment, the most powerful of the Venus summon. He would shoot a ball of amber energy, and any opponent caught in it would be transported to a cutscene. The same cutscene from the game, where Judgment would fire a beam downward to create a massive energy explosion, dealing massive damage and knockback. Honestly, I think it works for the golden boy himself, Isaac. Meowscarada. Assuming Gen 9 Pokemon sticks around long enough to remain relevant in the spotlight, for the next Pokemon spot for Smash, Meowscarada seems to be the most prominent and popular of the Gen 9 starters currently, which is perfect because fans have been begging for a fully evolved, dedicated grass starter Pokemon for a long time. Charizard had his spotlight, Greninja had his, and when the time came for Sun and Moon to get a starter into Smash, instead of Decidueye the grass starter, we got Incineroar the fire starter. Not that Incineroar was a bad Pokemon, we just missed the opportunity for a dedicated grass starter, and it seems like the time is now. Meowscarada is front and center for all Gen 9 promotionals, the card game, the anime, and even some video games like Pokemon Unite. But what would her moveset look like? Well, for her neutral special, it has to be, what else? Flower Trick, Meowscarada's signature move. This move takes the flower that would be constantly following her throughout each fight and lobs it at the opponent for moderate damage, but by pressing the button again, she can detonate it, but it can also be held like an item and will auto-detonate after a short while, and it will reappear behind her for another use after detonation. Her side special can be a move I wanted to see in Smash for a long time, Magical Leaf. Honestly, for Meowscarada, it just works too well. In Pokemon, the move works like Razor Leaf, but it's weaker in exchange for perfect accuracy. We can change it for Smash, as Ivysaur has a Razor Leaf attack already, but looks closer to how it looks in the older games. So here we can instead make it look like the newer games, where it can be a barrage of leaves in a singular area that can be aimed as you're shooting. Of course, adding a magical glow effect on the leaves. For her down special, I chose Trick Room. The original move is a special move that slows down enemy speed, so we can do that same thing here. It can be a similar counter to Bayonetta, however, it is an active move instead of a reactive move, meaning you can use it as a counter for being hit by an opponent, but instead is used in the area around Meowscarada. For example, you can use it regardless of you being attacked, and anyone around her will slow down for a short while, but it has a big cooldown. But if used when being hit, it still only affects the people surrounding her, meaning if hit by a projectile, it won't slow the person down unless they're nearby. It also means she won't take any damage from the hit, and the slowdown effect lasts longer if she used it as a reactive counter. Next, for her up special, I thought of Petal Blizzard. When used on the ground, it summons leaf petals to surround her on all sides, and she can move a bit while using the move. But while in the air, the petals send her flying in a specific direction. And finally, her final smash, Grassy Terra Blast. When activated, Meowscarada will glow with the terrestrial energy and blast a beam of grassy energy in front of her, ending with a blast similar to the original Terra Blast move when used with a Grass Terra type. I think it's time to put Meowscarada into the spotlight.
these kids are gonna end up stealing each other's life force. And me, I've robbed them even of that kindness.
Now, I'm not the biggest Xenoblade fan. I've only ever played the first game, so I know nothing about this character, but I do know the series is huge. And of course, I did kick Pyra and Mithra from the board as a hypothetical, and I think Noah would be the replacement. But on top of that, I could still see him coming in even if they did keep all the old fighters. But since I know nothing about this game, I had a buddy of mine from my Discord server, Chuck the Ruckus, help me since he's a massive Xenoblade fan. So here's what he came up with. So before we get into his actual moves, Noah is going to have a special mechanic that will affect his moves. Instead of Shulk's art palette, we would instead have a meter for Noah's katana form, the Lucky 7, that he keeps stowed away in his weapon, Veiled Sword. To build this meter, it will look like the art palette meter from Xenoblade Chronicles 3, and will build as Noah deals and receives damage. When his Lucky 7 is out, you have a set time limit to use these moves before it depletes. Noah's neutral could be Ground Beat, where he slams Veiled Sword onto the ground, and a wave of energy does extra damage onto the opponent. When Lucky 7 is out, this move would become Tachyon Slash, which does a series of slashes in one area. For his side special, it would be his Edge Thrust, where Noah does a forward jab with Veiled Sword, moving him forward. This would be a decent recovery as well. When Lucky 7 is out, it becomes Dimension Ripper, where he slashes and it creates a dark circle that damages anyone who is in it. For his down special, he could have Overclock Buster, where he summons energy into a flip jump slash with Veiled Sword. When Lucky 7 is out, this becomes Harmonic Wave, where he does a stance before delivering a series of slashes at the opponent. Finally, his up special would be Air Slash. Using Veiled Sword, he slashes upward, similar to Shulk's Air Slash. And while Lucky 7 is out, this becomes Gravity Blow. This would work slightly different, where when done on the ground, it would look like it does in the game, where it would deal a burst of energy around him, dealing damage to anyone near him. But when done in the air, it would do the same, but the energy would launch him upwards. And finally, his final smash is Ouroboros, where Noah calls on Mio to use their Origin Blade Ouroboros form to become massive and slash down onto the battlefield. However, if Lucky 7 is out, he would instead use the move Final Lucky 7, a series of slashes that would hit everyone unfortunate enough to be in his line of fire. Regardless on how they do his moveset, I'm sure a lot of Xenoblade fans would be happy to see Noah here.
You have followed my instructions faithfully so far. Continue to do so. It's that simple. I consider your performance here on ZDR highly satisfactory. As I hoped, it has even awakened your Metroid powers. I was right to let you live during our first encounter. That one glimpse you showed told me everything. Submit and offer up your power. My plan is the only way to bring order to the galaxy. Fulfill your destiny, Samus. This is an order. Disobedience will not be tolerated.
Ravenbeak. This is a character I went back and forth on. I originally chose Sylix, as Metroid Prime 4 is on its way, but that doesn't mean Smash couldn't do 2 Metroid reps. But I figured a new face for Metroid made more sense, as Ravenbeak is the villain of Metroid Dread. But if they only wanted one new rep and Prime 4 does come out, maybe Sylix would be the more prevalent one, but I digress. In Dread, Ravenbeak is about double Samus' side, but if they made Ridley work, this shouldn't be hard to pull off. Just make him the size of Ganondorf and we should be good. His neutral special could be Beam Burst, a volley of beam shots that can be shot out like a machine gun, but weakens the longer you hold down the button, much like Bowser's Flame Breath or Charizard's Flamethrower. His side special could be Flash Shift, which allows him to phase through anything up to 2 times. The first one is to the side and the second one can be moved in any direction, but does no damage. For his down special, he could have Lightning Armor, a shield of electrical energy which could be powered by an Aeon Gauge near his life, and grants super armor and allows him to take less damage, but the gauge depletes as it's active, and every time he gets hit, the gauge depletes faster. But the gauge will increase slowly while he's moving and attacking. For his up special, it obviously should be Chozo Wings, and is shown in his attack in Metroid Dread, and works well with his side special. And for his final smash, I think Ravenbeak X is probably the best fitting final smash. He could throw his black hole move that pulls in opponents, before transporting them to his final face area from Dread, before being attacked by Ravenbeak X. I think Ravenbeak is a cool villain, and I had to do a little research for him, but I still think he'd be a great addition to Smash.
Devil may cry.
Dante. I mean, if you know anything about my channel, you probably saw this coming. Dante is my most wanted character for Smash Bros, but I also think he just fits well into the roster. I think using his DMC5 appearance is fine, however, I'll only be giving him his basic weapons from the beginning of the game, that being Rebellion, Balrog, his dual pistols Ebony and Ivory, and his shotgun the Coyote A. For him, I can see him having a fairly complicated moveset, but I'll try and simplify it here with his specials. For his specials, I think tying in each of one of his 4 styles works best, and I think a lot of his moveset could work based on if you tap the button or hold it down. For his neutral special, he can use Gunslinger style. Tapping the button repeatedly allows him to shoot his pistols Ebony and Ivory, and it would still allow him to move back and forth while in this state, and the shots can be adjusted to move upwards and downwards, but holding the button down keeps Dante in place. He will continually shoot, but when moving, the analog stick will instead have Dante shoot in front of him with Ebony, but Ivory can change where it's being shot from. But if used in the air, it becomes Rainstorm. For his side special, it can be called Swordmaster style. Tap the button once and he'll use Prop, and tap it shortly after and he'll use Shredder. However, if you hold the button down, he will charge up his Drive attack. Hold the button longer and he will use Overdrive. However, if used in the air, it becomes Killer B, using his Balrog. His down special is, what else, Royal Guard style. Dante would have 2 gauges by his damage meter, one for his Devil Trigger and the other for Royal Guard. Use Royal Guard sort of like Joker's down special. The more you get attacked, the more your Royal Guard gauge fills up. However, holding it down for blocking attacks, and tapping the button to release the energy in a single attack, draining the gauge back to 0. The more it's filled, the more damage and knockback it does. It fills less when using his down special, but fills more if you manage to pull off a perfect shield. For his up special, it can be Trickster style. Tapping it once teleports Dante into the air, and following it up with another B tap shortly after propels Dante forward. However, hold the button down and you can choose the direction Dante teleports to. And of course, the more damage Dante receives and deals, he can increase his DT gauge, and he can go into Devil Trigger by shielding and pressing the B button. Because for his final smash, it's his Sin Devil Trigger, where Dante transforms into his Sin Devil Trigger and performs his basic attack before one final slash to send any unfortunate opponent caught up in his combo. Dante just needs to be in this game. So, those were my ideas for the new characters. Now, with that, we can move on to the stages. Starting with the stages I think we can cut, then move on to the new stages. So, assuming characters get cut from the game, obviously any stage specifically tied to them would go. But, obviously, this doesn't count unless there are more characters in the series that can make it viable to keep. But, for the sake of the video, the characters I cut get their stages removed. Some of the stages have another character tied to them, but only one. So I figured it would just make sense to keep the stage that came with them. But that's assuming they cut those characters, but obviously the hopeful goal is to keep all the characters, so assume those stages stay if there are no cuts. But as for the other stages I don't think we need to keep, or largely people don't like, I decided to cut the following. Spear Pillar, just to make room for more Pokemon stages. Hand and Bow is just boring. Unova Pokemon League for the same reason as the other stage. Balloon Fight is also boring, so I cut that stage as well. Living Room, Find Me, and PictoChat are cruel references to old Nintendo, but I think it's time we cut them and put in newer stages. The Great Cave Offensive, the Great Cave Offensive is a stage that is just too massive, and I think it can go. Then, because they are just not memorable, Pilot Wings and Woo Woo Island can go too. Now that I got those out of the way, time for what you care about, the new stages. I decided I wanted to try and include at least one new stage per major series, unless I can come up with more, but at least one, meaning Mario, Legend of Zelda, etc. But for any series with only one character in it, they just need the one stage, so no new stage for those characters. Now, let's start with the new characters introduced in my roster, then move on by series. I don't think there needs to be a definitive number of new stages, but I decided on 30 new stages. For the first stage, since Waluigi is a character in the roster, I thought maybe adding a Mario Golf or Tennis stage. However, I decided on Waluigi Pinball. Now, this is originally a Mario Kart stage, but I decided on making it also a Smash stage, but instead of it being from Mario Kart, it could be a completely original Smash stage that doesn't have any references to Mario Kart at all, and it's just a stage inside a pinball machine based around Waluigi. Next, for Geno stage, it obviously needs to be Forest Maze. Anyone who thought of Geno for Smash universally agrees on this being his definitive stage. I decided to give Hyrule Warriors a stage since I'm using Hyrule Warriors Impa as a character, and the only original place in Hyrule Warriors is the Valley of Seers. I think for the Ring Fit trainees, their stage would be Beginia, a side-scrolling stage based on that area from Ring Fit of the same name. For Zero, his stage can be Sigma's Hideout. The stage is based on the final stage in the first Mega Man X game, where you fight Velgarder and Sigma. It can be a transformable stage that changes between the 4 stages of Sigma's Hideout. In Stage 1, the stage hazard would be Boss Spider, Stage 2's hazard would be Ring de Bengda, Stage 3's hazard would be D-Rex, and of course, Stage 4 would have Velgarder and Sigma, but eventually would change to Wolf Sigma. I think everyone has been in agreement that Golden Sun's stage should be Venus Lighthouse, so I'll stick that here. For Xenoblade 3, I figured Agnes Cast would be a great area. Since we got Ravenbeak, I decided on Berenia from Metroid Dread. And for me, I loved the idea of a transformable stage from Devil May Cry, so I went with the Timon Gru from DMC3. With the stages tied to characters completed, I speedrun the last of these stages. Flower Kingdom as a transformable stage from Mario Wonder, a Mario Maker 2 stage, The Depths from Tears of the Kingdom, Clock Tower from Majora's Mask, Linearu Desert, a transformable stage that includes the Time Shift Stones, maybe bring back Woolly World and make it Crafted World stage for Yoshi's Woolly World and Crafted Worlds respectively. Natural Plains from Kirby's Forgotten Land, Fortuna from Star Fox Zero. I went for 4 new Pokemon stages, the Battle Tree from Sun and Moon, Pokemon Stadium 3 for Sword and Shield, but including Gigantamax Pokemon, and of course Area 0 from Scarlet and Violet. And just for kicks, I decided to bring in a Pokefloats 2 stage with updated Pokemon. Since I didn't include characters from Fire Emblem Engage, I decided to add a Somniel stage for the game instead. For Kid Icarus, I decided to include Space Pirate Ship from Uprising. I decided to add Diamond City from the WarioWare games, and from Pikmin 4, I decided on Serene Shores, for a bit of a different look for the Pikmin stages. I find it strange that this stage was never added yet, but I think a retro stage for Gyromite would be a cool Rob Home stage, and I think a Duck Hunt 3D stage would be a cool HD updated version of Duck Hunt's home stage. I think a Splatoon 3 stage is needed, and I'm going for Inkopolis. And for some Mii stages, a Miitopia stage and a transformable stage for Wii Sports would be cool, where the stage changes periodically to show one of the sports shown in the original Wii Sports. If you guys have some cool stage ideas, let me know in the comments below, but that concludes the stage portion. Now, with all that being done, the final thing I'll talk about is DLC. I'm going to approach this the same way Ultimate approaches their DLC, with one exception. That being, I'll have 2 DLC Echo Fighters as well per DLC wave. But they will be free as they don't really take up much space as actual fighters, and they'll only be Echo Fighters for the base roster characters. For this, I'll include 3 sets of DLC, not just 2, and I'll only discuss the characters and stages but not the music. I will also not give moveset ideas here, as the video is already 64 pages long now, so let's start with the first DLC, which oddly enough I decided as a pre-order bonus DLC, just like Piranha Plant for Ultimate. I'll also include 2 free Echo Fighters upon its release. That fighter is... Midna. I've always wanted to include Midna as a playable fighter. The question is, would she be on Wolf-Link or the Wolf-Link clones from Hyrule Warriors? I would say Wolf-Link is probably the more iconic to use, but either way, I think she would be the perfect start to DLC and pre-order bonus. As for the Echoes, I chose Guigi as a Luigi Echo and Hilda as a Zelda Echo. And with that, let's move on to Fighters Pass 1. Like I said, I'll be structuring the Fighters Passes like Smash Ultimate did, including 5 characters each, but this time with 2 free Echo Fighters. Realistically, I think we would only get 2 Fighters Passes, but I decided to include my ideas for a hypothetical 3rd wave of DLC, but for Fighters Pass 1, here are my choices.
Is this rain ever gonna stop? I've forgotten what the sun looks like. We should go on vacation. Somewhere warm. Somewhere sunny. Last one there's a Nork.
Spyro. I mean, at this point, I'm surprised it hasn't happened yet. He is an older character, but I think there is enough brand recognition with his name, I think it needs to happen. And Spyro would be a really cool character to include into Smash. As for his stage, I think Dreamweavers is the perfect Spyro stage. Travis touchdown. Now for me, I never personally played No More Heroes, but I'm aware it's really popular, and is one of the most requested characters I've seen for Smash Bros. And I can see why. He definitely looks like an interesting character, and I'm sure fans would love to see him in the game. His stage obviously has to be the No More Heroes Hotel, cause it just has to be.
I didn't want to use this, but... Restriction 666 released. Dimensional interruption imaginary number formed. Azure Grimoire? Activated! Take this, you son of a bitch!
Ragna the Blood Edge. Now, I wanted to include an Arc Systems character, and in my mind, 3 characters are from really popular Arc System games, Guilty Gear, BlazBlue, and Under Night In-Birth. But among them, Guilty Gear is more popular, but I think adding Ragna first makes sense, since BlazBlue came first, and we can add other characters later. But even then, I think adding any one of the 3 main protagonists of the 3 games would fit here. As for the BlazBlue stage, it should definitely be Adventus. It's the perfect all-around BlazBlue stage. Amaterasu. This is one I'm sure many people can agree would be an amazing pick for Smash 6. Its art style clashes in the best way possible, and for her stage, Nippon is the perfect stage, and having a stage with this art style just works really well with Smash Bros.
We did it! Let's go, Amy!
Yeah!
You little thieves! Did you really think you could get out of here alive?
Come and get some, Eggman.
Sonic!
I'm plotting my scheme. Just leave it to me.
This time, I'll take your lives as well as the Chaos Emerald. I call on you to destroy these pests! Come out, my servant!
Dr. Eggman. Now, for base roster, Eggman missed it just barely, but now we have DLC, and here I think Eggman deserves a spot, as we definitely need more villains in here, and for his stage we have to include the Death Egg. That's the end of the regular Fighters Pass, but of course the DLC would include Demise as a Ganon Echo, and Funky Kong as a Donkey Kong Echo. And with that, let's move on to Fighters Pass 2.
Then do it.
This is the Crusader. If your heart is pierced by this weapon, you will fall into a deep sleep. But Satan will think you dead. Centuries will pass, and his acolytes will start to prepare for his return. At the appropriate time, I will remove the sword. It's done.
Alucard. With Alucard being such a popular character in Castlevania, I figured this would be the best spot to put him in as a unique Castlevania character rather than just another Belmont. For her stage, I think the Forbidden Wing would work, given its infinite corridors could be an interesting transforming stage.
Heir to the throne of the entire demon world, she shirks her responsibilities so that she may gallivant throughout the human realm, seeking pleasure and excitement. But do not misjudge her. Beneath her beautiful flesh lies the soul of a demon as powerful as any ever known, and she is willing to bear all.
Morrigan. We needed a Darkstalkers character, and I think one of these two characters fits best for Smash, Morrigan or Jontel Bane. But I think Morrigan is far more recognizable, though I understand that she may have a more provocative look. They can just censor it like they did with Mithra and Bayonetta, and I think it'll be fine. For her stage, Makai the Dark World works the best.
Welcome back to Behind the Hero. Tonight's heroes are the duo who recently restored peace and order to our galaxy, Ratchet and Clank. So, gentlemen, tell us about your latest incredible adventures.
Ratchet and Clank. I mean, I think it goes without saying that we need a ton of fan-favorite characters to one-up Smash Ultimate, and I think Ratchet and Clank would be a definite pick for this franchise, if for nothing else than just for recognizability and popularity. As for the stage, I gotta go with Kerwan.
Long ago, the primordial forest, deep and mysterious, witnessed the birth of a man. A vegetable. No. A thingamajig. Conjured from the magnificent moonbeams of the second summer solstice, woven together by us, the nymphs, destined to preserve the equilibrium of the sacred universe, the one we call Rayman, proved himself to be absolutely unmanageable. An utter loss of face for the magic peoples, of course.
Rayman. I mean, come on, with the last pick I did, this was inevitable. Rayman is just too popular and has been asked for years now. And I think it's time for his dues, and he's on the list for the most requested characters for Smash. For a stage, I think Gibberish Jungle works best for him.
But, Dr. Cortex, we haven't determined the cause of past failures.
Moron! This Bandicoot will be my general, and he will lead my Cortex commandos to world domination. This time, I shall reign triumphant. We are closer than ever before. Quickly, into the vortex.
Dr. Cortex, the vortex is not ready. We have no idea what it could do.
Failure again. Capture him!
Uh-oh.
Crash Bandicoot. I mean, if you don't have him for a Fighter's Pass Ender, something is wrong. Crash Bandicoot is probably the most requested newcomer for Smash Bros. He missed the cut for Ultimate, but I think it's time for him to be included. As for his stage, everyone seems to be in agreement that Insanity Beach makes the most sense. Now, that's it for the 5 newcomers. As for the new Echoes, I chose Roxas as a Sora Echo and Jean as a Bayonetta Echo. Thus ends Fighter's Pass 2. Now, if we were going to do this like Smash Ultimate, this would end right here. But if by some miracle we did get a 3rd Fighter's Pass, here is what I think it would look like.
You can stop right there, Leon. Wouldn't make me use this, would you?
Well, after 6 years, that is one hell of a greeting, Ada.
You don't seem surprised. Interesting.
Try using knives next time. Better for close encounters.
Leon, another Capcom character. Listen, Capcom has one of the best relationships with Nintendo, and I'd argue are some of the best and most iconic third-party characters to pull from. Plus, I'm giving variety in my Capcom fighters. Leon is one of the most iconic, and I think he needs to be included as a Resident Evil rep for Smash Bros. As for the stage, we would either use the village from the beginning of Resident Evil 4 or Salazar's castle.
What's wrong?
I have to pull you back now.
Huh? Whoa! What was that?
I shot it, but I do say so myself. Good riddance, human scum! The world's better off without you!
Viridi. I think we needed more Kid Icarus characters, and Viridi I believe would be an amazing choice, and very unique as a fighter. But as for the stage, I think we would include the Lunar Sanctum.
Objection! Why, it's you!
Phoenix Wright. Yeah, another Capcom character. But Phoenix Wright is one of the most requested Capcom characters and would bring the most unique moveset I've seen in Smash. And obviously, we need to include the Ace Attorney courtroom as a stage.
This is the place. Time to kick back and relax. Hey! This place is a paradise! We get to stay here for a whole week! Can you believe it?
Shantae. Now, a lot of people want indie characters as playable fighters, and I would argue Shantae is the only one who could fulfill this role and stay relevant as Smash continues as a franchise. For her, I would include Scuttletown as a stage. Chrono. Finally, Chrono from Chrono Trigger is probably a perfect end to a Fighter's Pass, as he's been requested for a long time, and is an amazing character. For his stage, the End of Time would be perfect. As for the Echoes, I included Zack as a Cloud Echo, and Miss Pac-Man as a Pac-Man Echo, thus ending the DLC for Smash. And with that, there is your roster for a hypothetical Super Smash Bros. 6 game. I did what I could to include as many of the most requested fighters for Smash, and I think I did as good a job as any. But if there's a character you wanted to see and I didn't include it, please let me know in the comments. Smash Bros. Is a game that many love for its variety and just how many fighters it can cram into a single fighting game. But always make sure to stay until the end of my teaser for my next Builder Roster video. And please let me know what games you would love to see me tackle next. But with that, that's all I have for you guys in this video. Please leave me all your thoughts in the comments below. If you like this video, please hit the like button, and if you really like this video and want to see more like it, why not consider subscribing for more if you guys enjoyed. And hit that notification bell for more videos like this. Also check out all my socials in the description, as well as checking out my Patreon if you guys want to support me further. And until next time guys, stay hype, stay awesome, stay weird, and be nice to each other. I'm Cybertech Werewolf, and I'll see you guys next time.
Persona!
I am thou. Thou art I. Show the strength of thy will and rage against all challengers.